The snow on the celebrant is grey with ash, and the river runs thick as if it is trying to carry the screaming away. Men slip in the mud and do not rise again. Horses, riderless, crash through broken spears and torn banners. Out on the flat, dark boats grind onto the bank like teeth. In the smoke, a horn sounds once, then chokes into silence, and a green field becomes a grave. If you enjoy these Middle-earth what-ifs told like living history, leave a like and consider subscribing. It helps the channel more than anything. And tell everyone watching, where are you listening from tonight, and what corner of the world feels closest to Rohan in your mind? Sirion, steward of Gondor, will remember that horn for the rest of his short life. He stands on a low rise with frost on his beard and blood drying on his sleeve. And he sees what his captains do not yet dare to say aloud. The line is broken, not bent, broken. The Balchoth have not come as raiders to be scattered. They have come as a people, with women and children in wagons far behind, with herds, with priests and chieftains, with a hunger sharpened by long marches and the cold discipline of fear. Their shields are painted black and red, and their arrows fall as if the sky itself is shedding iron. Sirion had sent for help across the plains, north to the Eorl beyond the eaves of the greenwood, for a people of horse and hard weather. That message is already on its way, carried by a man who rides like a shadow and dares the wolves. But the message was a prayer cast into a storm. Prayer is not always answered in time. On the far bank, among reeds crushed under many feet, a Balchoth captain lifts his hand. The gesture is small, almost gentle, but it looses a fresh wave of men into the shallows, and the river is suddenly filled with bodies pushing forward as if they are one creature. Their war cries are high and rhythmic, rising and falling like the chant of oars. Sirion turns to Captain Borondir, his most trusted rider, the one who has already been wounded twice today and is still upright. "Take the standard," Sirion says. His voice is calm, which is worse than shouting. If the field is lost, the story must not be lost with it. Borondir looks down at the white tree embroidered on black cloth, already spotted with mud. "And you, Lord?" Sirion looks toward the south, toward the long road to Minas Tirith, toward duty that never ends. "I will buy you time. There are men on this field who will live, and they will call this day a defeat." Sirion knows it is not only that, it is a door opening. The first turning point comes not with a heroic fall, but with a simple mistake made in the grinding exhaustion of battle. A Gondorian lieutenant, younger than his helm, sees a cluster of Balchoth at the river and believes he can cut them off. He calls his troop forward, trying to reclaim the bank. His men surge, eager to do something other than die in place. They drive into the shallows, and for a heartbeat, it works. The Balchoth give ground. Then the boats that looked like teeth become jaws. From behind the reeds, hidden by smoke, a second line of boats swings in. Nets weighted with stones arc over the heads of the Gondorians and drop on them like drowning. Men go down in water no deeper than their knees, trapped, stabbed, trampled. And the lieutenant dies with his mouth full of river, and with his death, the bank becomes a trap that pulls more in. Sirion watches the panic spread along his left. He does not blame them. He has fought too many wars to judge the frightened. But he sees what fear does. It makes men run toward whatever looks like safety, even when it is a slaughterhouse. Behind Sirion, the sound of hooves rises. Gondorian cavalry, his last reserve. For a moment, hope flashes like sunlight on steel, but the horses balk at the stench and the shouting, and the riders are not the horse lords of the north. Gondor has riders, yes, but it has not been a land of horses in the old way for generations. These animals are trained for patrol and message, not for a desperate charge into a wall of spear points. A captain shouts, "Forward!" and the line moves. Arrows darken the air. Horses scream in a pitch that makes men flinch like children. The charge collapses into a churned knot of dead bodies and stamping legs. Sirion closes his eyes for one breath. He does not have another reserve. He does not have another plan. Across the field, an Easterling chieftain rides forward on a shaggy horse. His coat is fur-lined and his helm is crowned with horn. A necklace of teeth bounces on his chest, teeth that have belonged to men from many lands. His name, in his own tongue, is Uldar the Reed King, and he had sworn to carve a kingdom out of the grasslands west of Anduin. He does not know the old names of this place, Calenardhon. He does not care. The grass is good. The land is open. It will feed his herds. He lifts a curved blade toward the Gondorian line, and he speaks to his men as if giving a blessing. They answer with a roar and surge again. The Balchoth do not fight like orcs, wild and snarling. They fight like men who have decided that mercy is weakness, and weakness is death. Sirion feels the shift, like a tide turning. His mind, trained by years of command, races ahead to consequences. If the Balchoth break through here, they will pour into the plains. If they take the crossings, Gondor cannot easily return. If Calenardhon falls, the west is exposed. And if the west is exposed, who will stop the shadow when it stirs again? In a house far away under a different sky, a man named Eorl has not yet heard any of this. He is in the far north among the Eorl, where the wind comes down from the mountains like a knife and the nights are long. He stands in his hall at Framsburg, and the smoke from the hearth curls around carved beams dark with age. He listens to a scout describing movement in the south. Wolves seen in unusual numbers, men travelling with fear in their eyes, rumours of boats on the Anduin. The messenger from Gondor, Borondir, is still days away, pushing his horse until its flanks are raw. Eorl is young enough that his men still watch him with that peculiar blend of affection and doubt that chiefs must earn their way through. He has the look of a man born to ride, shoulders set, eyes clear, hair pale in firelight. Yet even he cannot ride faster than time. His wife, Britta, sits near the hearth with their infant wrapped in wool. She watches Eorl the way women watch men who carry too much fate without realizing it. "Do you feel it?" she asks quietly. Eorl does not pretend. "Yes," he says, as something is moving. Outside, the horses stamp in their shelter. The air smells of old hay and coming snow. Somewhere beyond their borders, the world is changing. Back on the Celebrant, Sirion makes the choice that will become a whisper in Gondor for centuries. He will not retreat in order. He orders a fighting withdrawal toward the south, but it is an order meant to be broken in the very giving. He stays with the rear guard, and he chooses his companions not for rank, but for stubbornness. Men who will stand because they do not know how to do anything else. Borondir is already gone with the standard, riding hard, a small dot swallowed by distance. He carries the last clean version of this day, the version that still holds the possibility of help. Sirion takes up a spear, though his arm aches, and he steps into the press. A Balchoth warrior with a wolfskin cloak swings at him. Sirion catches the blow on his shield and drives the spear point up under the man's ribs. Hot blood steams in the cold. Sirion has killed before. He has also signed orders that killed far more. He does not have the luxury of feeling either. The second turning point comes with a sound that cannot be unheard. The crack of Gondor's line breaking at last, like ice giving way under weight. Men run. Some throw down shields to move faster. Others cling to a banner as if cloth can save them. The Balchoth howl and chase, and the chase becomes a harvest. Sirion is knocked to one knee. A boot stamps on his hand. He feels bones shift. A blade flashes down. And then, absurdly, a horse slams into the attacker from the side. Not a trained warhorse, but a panicked animal fleeing. The Balchoth warrior goes down under hooves. Sirion rolls, scrambles, and finds himself hauled upright by a soldier he does not recognize, a man with a scar across his chin and terror in his eyes. "Lord," the man gasps. "This way." They run. Behind them, the field is lost. Smoke rises where tents burn. The river itself seems to writhe. When night comes, the Balchoth light fires across the bank as if they are pinning stars to the earth, a constellation of conquest. Sirion reaches a stand of trees south of the river with fewer men than he began with. His captains gather, battered and hollow-eyed. Someone begins to count, then stops because the counting is shameful. "What of Boromdir?" one asks. "He rides," Sirion says. "He must." A young soldier, barely old enough to grow a beard, stares back toward the field. "Will help come?" he whispers, and not to Sirion, but to the cold itself. Sirion does not answer, because the answer is a question that burns. What if help comes too late? In the days that follow, the Balchoth do what victors do when they intend to remain. They do not merely loot, they settle. Their wagons roll into the green plains of Calenardhon, and their herds follow. They cut turf for huts, and they raise palisades around captured hillocks. They send riders west toward the Gap of Rohan, not yet called that, toward the frowning ring of Isengard, where the wizard Saruman watches from Orthanc with eyes like cold stones. Saruman has been in Middle-earth long enough to recognize a hinge in history when it creaks. He stands at a high window, hands clasped behind his back, and listens to the wind moan through the stones. Below, the circle of Isengard's walls catches the light like a serpent. He had come to this place as an ally, a warden set to watch the passes and guard against the shadow. But he is also a mind that cannot stop measuring power. A messenger arrives from the Dunlendings of the West, a lean man with rain in his hair and suspicion in his face. He bows stiffly, not as to a lord, but as to a force he cannot ignore. "The horsemen are not here," the Dunlending says, spitting the words like a charm against bad luck. "The plains are taken by strangers. What will you do, White Wizard?" Saruman smiles without warmth. "What will I do?" he repeats. His voice is soft. "I will watch, and I will learn." He does not say that an empty land between Isengard and Gondor is an invitation. He does not say that a conquered people are easier to bend than a free one. He does not say that if the Balchoth hold the plains, Gondor will be forced to bargain, and bargains can be shaped. Far away, in Lothlorien, Galadriel stands beneath Malon leaves that do not wither, and she feels the tremor of a new darkness. Not the ancient shadow of Sauron alone, but the spreading stain of human cruelty. She does not weep. She has seen too much to weep often. But she turns her gaze south and whispers to herself, "So the grassland will drink." In Minas Tirith, news arrives like a wound reopened. A rider staggers into the city with mud up to his knees, and the guards at the gate stare at his face and know before he speaks. His horse is lathered white, trembling. The rider collapses, and the sound of his body hitting stone echoes down the passageway. Cirion, weeks later, enters the city not in triumph, but as a man returning from a fire he failed to stop. He walks through the white streets with his cloak torn, and people step back as if defeat is contagious. Children stop playing. Old men stop talking. The city seems to listen. In the hall of the steward, Cirion sits under the high seat and speaks to his council. Calenardhon is gone, he says. He forces the words into the air. He will not let them rot inside him. The Balchoth have crossed in strength beyond any we faced. They are settling. They are fortifying. They will return in spring with greater numbers. A lord of Gondor, heavy with rings and pride, leans forward. Then we will drive them back. With what? Cirion asks. Silence answers. Gondor has soldiers, yes. It has walls and towers and ancient memory, but it has been bleeding for generations. Plague, war, kin strife, the slow erosion of vigilance. The garrisons on the Anduin are thin, and the southern fiefs demand protection from corsairs. There are never enough men for all the dangers. Cirion's stewardly duty is to prioritize. That is another name for choosing what will burn. Send to our allies, another councillor suggests, grasping at old patterns. Send to the north, send to the horsemen. Cirion's eyes flicker, and for a moment the audience sees the private pain beneath the public face. We did, he says. A messenger rides. In the wild north, Borondir does ride. He has ridden until his first horse died under him, then traded for another, then pushed again. His breath burns his lungs. His hands are cracked. He has not slept more than brief moments hunched against a tree. He crosses rivers half frozen and hills where wolves shadow him. Each time he stops, he sees the celebrant again in his mind, hears the horn that died. At last, he reaches Framsburg, and the guards nearly loose arrows at him until they see the white tree on his torn tabard. He is brought before Eorl. Borondir falls to one knee, but it is not a courtly gesture. His legs simply fail. He holds out a sealed message. His voice comes out raw. Lord of the Eorl, he says. Gondor calls. Eorl breaks the seal and reads. The hall is quiet except for the fire. When he looks up, his eyes have changed. He looks older, as if the words have added years. How long? He asks. Borondir swallows. Too long, he says. The field was lost. A murmur runs through the hall like wind through grass. Men shift, hands tightening on knife hilts. They had expected a call to battle, yes, but also the promise of arriving in time to turn the tide, to be saviors. The idea of riding into a land already conquered is different. That is not rescue. That is revenge, or a gamble with no glory. Britta stands, infant in her arms. She steps forward to her husband, unafraid of the eyes watching her. What will you do? She asks, echoing the question Saruman had asked. But hers is not calculating. It is the question of a home. Eorl looks at her, then at the men who have followed him through bitter winters and hungers. He speaks slowly. We will ride, he says. A man named Fastred, old and hard as frozen earth, shakes his head. Ride to what? To die on Chudge soil? To fight a people who already hold the plains? Eorl's gaze does not flinch. To keep the shadow from stepping west, he says. To keep these folk from thinking the world is theirs to take. And to keep our own hearts from shrinking. It is a speech, yes, but it is also truth. A people who do not ride to answer such a call do not remain a people for long. They prepare. Yet, even as the Eorl gather, time continues its indifferent march. Winter deepens, snowstorms close passes, rivers swell with melt and freeze in treacherous layers. The road south is long, and in the plains of Calenardhon, the Balchoth are building. Ordinary people feel the conquest first. In a village near the Entwash, a farmer named Hama hears hoofbeats in the night. He wakes to his dog's low growl, then the sudden yelp as a boot finds ribs. He peeks through a crack in the door and sees men with strange helmets, their breath steaming, their faces smeared with ash and fat. They laugh quietly as they pull his neighbor's daughter from her house. The girl's scream slices the air, and then a hand clamps her mouth. Hama's wife grips his arm so hard her nails draw blood. "Do not," she whispers, meaning do not go out, do not die, do not leave her alone. Their children are awake now, eyes wide, small hands clutching each other. Hama does nothing. He will hate himself for it for the rest of his life, but he will be alive to hate himself. In another hamlet, an old woman opens her door and throws a pot of boiling water at a Balchoth warrior. It strikes his face, and he howls. His companions drag her into the mud and cut her throat as if she is an animal. Her blood steams on the frozen ground. By spring, the plains are dotted with new palisades. Smoke rises from many small fires. The Balchoth do not build like Gondor, with stone and symmetry, and they build like a people who expect to move again if necessary. But they have one advantage. They have no memory of this land as belonging to anyone else. Their claim is fresh, and fresh claims are often the most violent. Cirion sends scouts north and west. Few return. One does, a boy with an arrow through his shoulder, staggering into Minas Tirith with fever. He speaks of Balchoth riders ranging as far as the Ison, of Dunlendings slipping into the chaos to take vengeance on any settlers they find, of orcs seen in the foothills of the misty mountains, drawn by the scent of weakness. Gondor's border is no longer a line, it is a bleeding edge. The third turning point comes with betrayal, quiet and almost reasonable. In the Council of Minas Tirith, a lord named Halas argues that Calenardhon is a lost cause, that Gondor must not waste men trying to reclaim grasslands when Mordor still watches. "Let them have it," he says, voice smooth as oiled leather. "We will fortify the Anduin, strengthen the Ramas Eorl, and protect what matters." "What matters?" Cirion asks, and the question is not rhetorical. He wants Halas to say it plainly. "The city," Halas says, "the line of the steward, the white tower, the heart." Cirion looks around the hall and sees nods. Fear makes men practical. Practicality can be another name for surrender. That night, Cirion walks alone on the wall of Minas Tirith and looks north. The stars are cold. The wind carries the distant scent of smoke from villages burned far away, though no one else can smell it. He remembers Calenardhon as it had been on maps, a broad buffer of open land, a place where Gondor could breathe before threats reached its throat. Now that buffer is a spear pointed at the west. He thinks of the oath he once dreamed of taking with a northern king, an oath of friendship and mutual aid. He does not yet know that in this world that oath will never be spoken. He wonders, briefly, whether the Valar have turned their faces away. In the north, Eorl's riders finally begin their long ride. Hooves drum on frozen earth, breath plumes. Men sing to keep fear from creeping into their bones. Their banners snap in the wind. White horse on green, a symbol not yet famous, not yet tied to a land called Rohan, because that land does not exist in their minds. It is only a destination of duty. They pass through the eaves of Mirkwood, where shadows cling between trunks. They skirt the edges of Lothlorien, and unseen eyes watch them. Some of the riders feel a strange lightness there, as if the air itself remembers beauty. Others feel unease, as if they are being judged. At night, Eorl sits with his captains. A young man named Leof, eager and sharp-tongued, asks the question that hangs over them all. If the field was lost, he says, what will we be riding into? Will Gondor still stand when we reach it? Eorl stares into the fire. Britta had given him a small token before he left, a strip of cloth from their child's blanket. Bring this back, she had said. It was not a command. It was hope made tangible. In the plains of Calenardhon, Uldar, the Reed King, hears of the riders coming. Scouts report a great host moving south, horsemen beyond counting. Uldar laughs, and his laugh is not foolish. He respects horsemen. He has fought them before in the east. He knows the sting of arrows from the saddle, the way speed can become a blade. He calls his war council in a timber hall built hastily on a low hill. The air inside is thick with sweat and smoke. His chiefs sit close, faces scarred, eyes restless. They come for Gondor, one says, licking lips. We will meet them and break them. Uldar taps his fingers on the arm of his chair. We will meet them, he agrees, but not where they want. He knows the plains. He has spent winter learning their folds, their rivers, the places where the ground becomes marshy and the horses sink. He knows where fog rises in the morning like ghostly cloth. He knows, too, that the Eorl will be stretched by their long ride, their horses tired. He plans an ambush at the crossings of the Limelight, where water can hide stakes, where reeds can hide men. He plans to turn the Horse Lord's strength against them. A Balchoth shaman, face painted with ash, murmurs, "The grass will drink again." The others nod as if it is a prophecy. The fourth turning point comes at dawn under a sky the colour of bruised steel. Eorl's host reaches the Limelight, expecting to find Gondorian scouts, perhaps even a welcoming force. Instead, they find silence. The river runs slow and cold, and mist lies low over the water. Reeds whisper. Somewhere, a bird calls once, then stops. Fastred, the old captain, rides to Eorl's side. It is wrong, he says simply. Eorl lifts his hand and the host slows. Men scan the banks. The mist seems to have weight, as if it presses against faces. Then an arrow hisses out of the fog and strikes a rider in the throat. Blood sprays dark. He topples without a sound because his voice is gone. The bank erupts with Balchoth warriors bursting from cover. Stakes drive up through the riverbed as men pull ropes, horses stumble, legs impaled. The water, shallow and deceptively gentle, becomes a trap. All shouts, "Back! Back from the crossing!" But the host behind him surges, confused, pushing forward. The front ranks are already in the water. The sound becomes chaos, splashing, screaming, the crack of wood, the wet thud of bodies. Eorl drives his horse along the line, trying to bring order, trying to make a coherent shape out of panic. He sees Leof, the young captain, fighting like a man possessed, spear thrusting, eyes wild. Leof turns and calls, "Lord, to the bank. We must take the bank." Eorl knows Leof is right. If they retreat in disorder, they will be cut down. If they seize the bank, they might form a line and force a path through. He makes the choice and raises his sword. "With me!" he cries. For a moment, the Eorl are what they were born to be, a storm of horse and steel. They plunge forward, not into open ground, but into reeds and mud, into hidden pits, into a killing place designed for them. Eorl reaches the bank. His horse rears, nearly falling as a stake grazes its belly. Eorl leans low, slashing at a Balchoth warrior who lunges. He feels the jolt of impact through his arm. He does not see the second warrior until the blade flashes toward his horse's neck. The horse screams and goes down. Eorl hits the ground hard, breath knocked out, mud filling his mouth. For a heartbeat, the world is only cold and brown. Then hands grab him. He expects death. Instead, Fastred hauls him up, face contorted with effort. "Move!" Fastred snarls, and it is not disrespect. It is survival. They fight their way to a small rise on the bank, a patch of firmer ground. Around them, the Eorl are scattered, some trapped in water, some fighting on the bank, some already retreating to regroup. Balchoth arrows continue to hiss. The mist is now tinged with smoke from torches thrown into reeds. Eorl climbs onto another horse, taken from a fallen rider. He looks back toward the river, and he sees bodies floating, armor glinting beneath water like drowned stars. So, this is what they rode into. The ambush does not destroy the Eorl, but it breaks their momentum. Their arrival is no longer a thunderclap that can shatter a siege. It is a grinding battle of attrition in hostile land. And while they bleed at the limelight, Gondor bleeds elsewhere. Sirion receives the news in Minas Tirith days later, delivered by a panting messenger. The Eorl have arrived, yes, but they are engaged, pinned, slowed. Sirion presses his fingers to his temple, feeling the weight of his crownless duty. He had imagined salvation riding like wind. He had imagined the northern horsemen striking the Balchoth flank, as on some old tale. Instead, fate has given him a different story. Help has come, but into a trap. He calls his council and orders a sortie north. Gondor will send what it can, thin as it is, to link with Eorl and prevent total destruction. Some lords protest. Hallis argues again that it is madness. Sirion stands, and the hall stills. "If we do nothing," he says, voice low, "then we have already died. We are simply waiting for our bodies to notice." The sortie marches. Among the soldiers is a man named Targon, a mason from Lossarnach who had never expected to fight. He carries a spear awkwardly, hands blistering. As they march out of the city, he smells the sweet scent of white blossoms in the gardens, and it strikes him like grief. He may never smell it again. He had argued with his wife before leaving, a small, foolish argument about a broken jug. Now he cannot remember what he said. He can only remember her face as he walked away, trying not to look back. On the road north, the air changes. It smells of damp grass and distant smoke. Villages they pass are half empty, doors hanging open. Crows watch from fences. At night, the wolves howl. They reach the edge of the conquered plains, and the scale of the Balchoth presence becomes clear. Fires dot the horizon. Wagons form circles like defensive rings. Riders patrol in pairs, moving with practiced ease. This is not an army camped temporarily. This is occupation. Targon grips his spear and whispers to the man beside him, "Where are the people who lived here?" The other man, a veteran, answers without looking. "Dead," he says, "or running, or hiding in holes and praying the holes are deep." The fifth turning point comes not in battle, but in a meeting that could have saved the world, and instead sets it on a different path. Sirion rides north with his soldiers and meets Eorl near the limelight on a raw, windy day. The two leaders stand facing each other amid mud and trampled reeds. Around them, men watch, hungry for a sign that their suffering has meaning. Sirion looks at Eorl and sees a man forged by hardship, eyes bright with intelligence and anger. Eorl looks at Sirion and sees a ruler bearing the weight of a kingdom that is tired. They speak alone at first, walking along the bank where water laps quietly against bodies that have not yet been retrieved. The smell is faint now because cold preserves. That makes it worse. Sirion says, "You came." Eorl's jaw tightens. "We came," he replies, "too late to save your field." Sirion flinches at the bluntness, but he does not deny it. Yes. Eorl looks south, toward Minas Tirith he has not yet seen. "You asked for aid," he says. "In my father's day, such a call would have been answered as a pledge. Now it was answered as a gamble." Sirion stops walking. He turns fully to Eorl. "If we survive this," he says, "I would give you this land, as our forefathers might have done. I would swear friendship. I would make of Calenardhon a shield again, held by your people." Eorl's eyes narrow. He hears the offer and understands it. Land, legitimacy, a future. But he also sees the land around them, occupied, stained, filled with enemies. This is not a gift. It is a burden wrapped in honor. "What good is land?" Eorl asks softly. "If it is a grave." Sirion answers, "It is only a grave if we fail." Eorl is silent for a long moment. Men nearby shift, listening. A gust of wind shakes reeds, and the sound is like distant rain. Eorl finally speaks, and his words are the hinge. "My people will not settle here," he says. "Not as long as this land is held by those who butcher its folk. We will fight beside you, yes. But when this is done, we will ride back north." In another world, those words would have been different. In another world, an oath would have been spoken and history would have bent toward green banners and white horses riding under a new sun. In this world, the Eortheod remain a visiting storm, not a rooted shield. Sirion's face hardens. He nods once. "Then we fight," he says. The campaign that follows is brutal and slow, and it is told later as a series of skirmishes and maneuvers, but lived it is mud, hunger, and the constant awareness of death. Gondor and the Eortheod strike Balchoth outposts, burning palisades in the night. The Balchoth retaliate, sweeping down on supply lines, slaughtering stragglers, poisoning wells. Dunlendings, seeing opportunity, raid both sides indiscriminately, taking captives and cattle. Orcs from the misty mountains begin to creep down into the chaos, drawn by the scent of unguarded corpses and the thrill of disorder. In Isengard, Saruman watches and begins to send his own agents, men with smooth words and hidden knives. He sends them not to fight, but to listen, to whisper, to offer small aids that create dependence. One of Saruman's agents finds a Balchoth chief who resents Uldar's authority. The agent brings gifts, iron tools, salt, a map of the plains. The chief accepts and asks, "Why does the White Wizard help?" The agent replies, "Because order is better than chaos." The chief laughs. "Order for whom?" The agent smiles. "For those wise enough to seize it." This is how seeds are planted, in small conversations that feel harmless. On a cold night near the Isen, Eorl sits with Fastred and Leof, who survived the ambush, but now carries a limp that will never heal properly. They share a skin of bitter liquor. Their men are asleep nearby, curled like animals around small fires. The sky is clear, stars sharp as needles. Leof asks, "If we win, what then? Will Gondor truly give land, or only gratitude?" Eorl does not answer immediately. He watches the fire consume a stick, the way wood becomes ash inevitably. "Sirion offered land," he says at last. "He meant it." Fastred snorts. "Meaning is wind. It blows where it will." Eorl looks toward the dark horizon. "My people are not ready to bury our dead in foreign soil forever," he says. "Not for a promise that could be broken by the next steward, the next war, the next plague." Leof's eyes gleam. "Then why do we keep dying here?" Eorl's voice drops. "Because if we do not, the enemy will not stop at these plains. They will come north too. And when they do, we will have fewer friends than we have now." It is truth, but it is also an admission that their ride, though heroic, cannot create a kingdom. It can only delay catastrophe. In the Shire, far away, spring comes gently. Rain falls softly on tilled fields. Hobbits grumble about weeds and gossip about who married whom. They know nothing of the Balchoth, and that ignorance is a fragile treasure. But even here, things change in small ways. Merchants traveling the Great Road speak of trouble in the south, of bandits and refugees. Dwarves passing through are more guarded than usual. Rangers are seen more often, silent and watchful. Samwise Gamgee is not yet born in this era, but other hobbits are, and they feel the world's unease as a draught under the door. They cannot name it. They only feel that the stories in inns are harsher than they used to be. The sixth turning point is a death that should not matter to history, and yet it does. Targon the Mason, marching with Gondor's forces, survives his first skirmish, then his second. He learns how to hold a spear without shaking. He learns to sleep with one ear open. He begins to feel absurdly proud, not of killing, but of enduring. Then, on a foggy morning, he is sent with a small group to escort grain wagons back toward Minas Tirith. The road runs through a shallow valley. The grass is wet with dew. The fog smells of earth and crushed leaves. A child's cry echoes from the side of the road. The soldiers halt. They look at each other. One mutters. Targon steps forward anyway, drawn by the sound. He sees, through fog, a small figure by a ditch. A girl, perhaps 8, hair tangled, face streaked with dirt. She is shaking. He walks toward her slowly, spear lowered. "It is all right," he says, and the words surprise him. He is speaking as he would to his own son. The girl looks up, eyes wide. Behind her, a shape moves. A Balchoth warrior rises from the ditch, like something born of mud, and stabs Targon in the belly. Targon gasps. The pain is white and immediate. He looks down at the blade, then up at the girl, who is not a girl at all, but a small boy disguised, eyes hard with terror and training. The boy does not look triumphant. He looks resigned. Targon falls. His hands clutch at grass. The world tilts. As he dies, he thinks of white blossoms in Minas Tirith, and of his wife's face, and of a broken jug. His last breath leaves him in a sound that is almost laughter, because he cannot believe that his life, which had felt so large in his own heart, ends in a ditch in a land Gondor is already losing. The Balchoth raid succeeds. The grain wagons burn. Soldiers die. Minas Tirith feels the loss not as tragedy, but as hunger. This is how wars are decided, not only by great battles, but by small cruelties that starve a city. Summer deepens, and the fighting in Calenardhon becomes a grinding stalemate. Gondor and the Eorl win victories, but but cannot hold ground. The Balchoth lose men, but replace them with new settlers arriving from the east, drawn by promises of land. Every burned palisade is rebuilt. Every slain captain is replaced by another hungry for status. Uldar, the Reed King, begins to understand that the horsemen are his greatest threat, not Gondor's infantry. He adapts. He recruits riders of his own, men who learn to shoot from horseback, who learn to fight the enemy in their own language of speed. The Balchoth becomes something new, not merely invaders, but a hybrid force shaped by the land. Eorl begins to see the terrible irony. By coming south, he is teaching the enemy. One evening, he stands on a hill and watches Balchoth riders practicing in the distance, silhouettes against a red sunset. Their arrows arc gracefully. Their horses, once shaggy and ill-trained, now move with improving discipline. Eorl's stomach tightens. He whispers, unheard, "What have I done?" In Isengard, Saruman's patience pays. He invites a small delegation of Balchoth chiefs to Orthanc under the guise of parley. They enter the ring of Isengard, wary but intrigued by stonework that seems to defy time. Saruman receives them in a chamber where the air is cool and echoes subtly. His voice is honeyed. He speaks through interpreters, offering counsel about how to hold land, how to build lasting rule. He offers them a thing they crave: legitimacy. "You are not merely raiders," Saruman tells them. "You are lords now. Behave as such. Create laws. Take hostages. Bind the conquered with oaths." A chief asks, suspicious, "Why would you teach us?" Saruman looks at him with eyes like polished glass. "Because a stable neighbor is better than a chaotic one," he says, and the words are true enough to be believed. In secret, Saruman sends word to Dunland as well, stirring their resentment, pointing them toward Gondor's weakness. He is weaving a net from both sides. Sirion, consumed by war, does not see this clearly. He hears rumors of Saruman's parley and feels a flicker of concern. But Saruman is a wizard, a member of the White Council, an ally. Surely he will not aid invaders. Surely is a dangerous word. Years pass. The war does not end. Sirion grows older, his hair whitening. His hands tremble sometimes when he thinks no one is watching. Gondor becomes accustomed to a permanent war on its northern border. The people of Minas Tirith learn to live with rationing and mourning. Children grow up hearing the word Balchoth as a bedtime warning. Eorl returns north when winter comes, as he promised, because his people cannot survive southern winters away from their own homes and supply. He leaves behind a smaller force of volunteers to aid Gondor, men who choose to remain out of loyalty or because they have nothing left in the north. But the great host goes back. They ride away across lands that never became theirs. Some among Gondor curse them for leaving. Others understand. Sirion watches them go with a face that reveals nothing, and when they are out of sight, he closes his eyes and feels something inside him collapse. He had gambled the future on those riders. They came, and it still was not enough. In the north, Eorl's people celebrate his return, but the joy is thin. Many did not come back. Britta holds him, feeling the scars under his tunic, and says nothing for a long time. When she finally speaks, her voice is quiet. Was it worth it? Eorl does not answer for a long moment. Then he says, "I do not know." It is the first time he has admitted uncertainty to her. It is also the beginning of the end of his myth, because myths require certainty. As decades turn, the conquered plains of Calenardhon become something else. They become a realm of mixed blood and uneasy rule. Balchoth chiefs holding timber halls, Dunlendings raiding and then bargaining, orcs occasionally hired as mercenaries and then hunted when they become inconvenient. Gondor's influence shrinks to the Anduin and the White Mountains. The Gap of Rohan becomes simply the Gap, a dangerous corridor where travelers disappear. And in the deep places of the world, other powers take note. In Mordor, Sauron feels the shift like a predator scenting weakness. He does not yet reveal himself fully, but his servants grow bolder. The Nazgul ride more often. The shadows lengthen along the Eorl Duath. Minas Morgul's pale light brightens. Gondor, without a strong ally in the west, becomes more isolated. In Lorien, Galadriel looks into her mirror and sees a future where the green fields that should have held horse lords are instead scarred by camps and gallows. She sees Minas Tirith besieged with no thunder of hooves on the Pelennor to break it. She sees a white wizard raising an army behind stone walls, not to defend the west, but to rule it. Her hands tighten on the rim of the mirror. So, she whispers, the long defeat grows longer. Then comes the War of the Ring, and the absence of Rohan is not a mere change. It is a void into which everything falls. When the One Ring is found and the Fellowship sets out, their path is subtly altered by the world they travel through. The road south from Rivendell is more dangerous because the lands between the Misty Mountains and Gondor are not watched by friendly horsemen. They are contested, lawless, filled with spies and hungry men. Aragorn, travelling under a rough cloak, sees burned farmsteads and the bodies of travellers left as warnings. He hears stories in taverns of Balchoth lords demanding tolls and taking daughters as tribute. He sees Saruman's influence in the way men speak of Orthanc with reluctant respect, as if it is a new throne rather than a watchtower. Legolas, moving lightly, feels the corruption in the land like a sour taste. "This should have been green and singing," he says once, voice tight. "It is wounded." Gimli replies, "Many things should have been. The world does not ask us." Boromir, son of Denethor, carries an extra bitterness in this world. He has grown up hearing of Calenardhon as a failure that never healed. He has fought Balchoth raiders himself along the Anduin's western bank. He does not speak of it often, but when he looks at the open lands, his eyes harden. To him, the West has been retreating all his life. "What hope do we have?" Boromir asks one night by the fire, "when even our empty fields are taken?" Aragorn answers softly, "Hope is not a field, it is a choice." Later, at the breaking of the Fellowship, Boromir still falls defending Merry and Pippin. His death is not prevented by this altered history, but his desperation is sharper, his plea to Aragorn more raw. "Do not let Minas Tirith stand alone," he gasps. It has been alone too long. His blood darkens the forest floor, and the sound of his horn echoes through trees that do not understand the weight of it. In Gondor, Denethor receives the warning of Mordor's assault and prepares as in the known tale, but with fewer hopes. There is no certainty of riders from the northwestern plains. There is no ancient oath to call upon. There is only Gondor stretched thin, and allied fiefs that are themselves harried by corsairs and by fear. Denethor looks from the high window of the White Tower and sees smoke on the horizon from villages burned by Balchoth raids, even as Mordor's armies gather. He laughs once, a short sound that is almost a sob. "Two jaws," he murmurs, "and we are the meat." In Isengard, Saruman makes his move earlier and with less resistance. Without a united Rohan to watch him, without a strong Horse King to challenge his influence, he turns the gap into his highway. He breeds orcs and men together in secret pits, and he sends them out to seize key crossings, to secure timber, to build engines of war. Treebeard and the Ents still exist, ancient and slow, but their anger is delayed. The deforestation spreads in quieter increments, and by the time the Ents fully rouse, Saruman's power is deeper rooted. Some Ents are felled and burned before they ever reach Isengard's ring. The forest's march is slower, more costly. When Gandalf escapes Orthanc in this world, he does so with greater urgency. He rides Shadowfax through lands that are not friendly. He passes refugees on the road, hollow-eyed families carrying what they can. He hears, in the night, Balchoth drums far off, a dull pulse like a heart that refuses to tire. He reaches Edoras, but Edoras, as it should be, does not exist. There is no golden hall of Meduseld, no line of kings of the Mark. Instead, there is a broken hill fort held by a Balchoth-descended lord who calls himself King of the Grass. His hall is timber, his banners dark, his guards suspicious. Gandalf stands before this lord and speaks with controlled power. "The shadow rises," he says. "If you do not stand with the West, you will be devoured with it." The lord smiles. "The West?" he asks. "I see only hungry neighbors. Why should I die for Gondor's tower?" Gandalf's eyes flash. "Because if Gondor falls," he says, "you will not have a kingdom, you will have a grave." The Lord's smile fades slightly, but he does not yield. He has lived by taking what he can. He cannot imagine dying for a cause. Gandalf leaves, and as he rides away, he feels a rare coldness of despair. He had counted on the Rohirrim in the old designs of his mind, even if he did not know it consciously. Now the board is missing a piece, and the game is uglier. Minas Tirith is besieged, and the battle that follows has moments of familiar horror and unfamiliar emptiness. The great Ramgrond still comes. The Witch King still rides before the gates. The Pelennor fields still stretch wide, but they are not filled with the thunder of 6,000 riders. Instead, they are churned by Mordor's hosts and trampled by desperate sorties from Gondor's defenders. There is a moment as the gate breaks when a rumor runs along the walls. Riders are coming. Some men weep with relief before they even see them. Then they see the banners. Not green and white, dark cloth with crude symbols, Balchoth and Dunlending warbands, drawn by the chance to plunder a dying city. They flood in from the north and west like carrion birds, not to save but to take. Denethor, watching from the tower, understands, and his mind finally shatters completely. He does not need a palantir to see doom. Doom is on the field. He orders the guards to bar doors, to protect his chambers, to hoard what little can be hoarded. His madness is not merely personal. It is Gondor's isolation made flesh. Faramir, wounded, is carried into the city as in the known tale, but there is less hope around him. The healer's hands shake. The herbs are fewer. The smell of smoke is thicker. Aragorn still comes by the paths of the dead, still arrives with black ships taken from corsairs. That deliverance remains, because it is bound to his lineage and the ancient oath of the dead. When his banner unfurls on the field, White Tree and 7 stars, men cry out. For a moment, relief sweeps like wind through grass. That is the beginning of the conclusion, the breath of relief after long suffocation. Mordor's forces falter under the shock of Aragorn's arrival. The corsairs' ships are turned. The defenders surge, and for a day it seems as if Minas Tirith might be saved by the narrowest margin. The Witch King, without Éowyn to face him, is instead met by a different fate. He presses too far into the fray, drawn toward Gandalf, and in the clash of powers and steel, he is struck down by a blade from a nameless Gondorian soldier whose fear turns into desperate courage. The soldier dies immediately after, crushed under a troll, and no songs remember his name. But the Witch King falls, and the air seems to clear as if a pressure has lifted. Men cheer, some laugh, some collapse crying, exhausted beyond dignity. Then disquiet creeps back in, like cold returning after a brief warmth. The Balchoth and Dunlending warbands that came to plunder do not simply vanish because Mordor retreats. They scatter through the ruins of the Pelennor, taking what they can, stabbing wounded men, stripping armor from the dead. Gondorian soldiers, furious, turn on them. Skirmishes erupt amid the aftermath of a greater battle. The field becomes a chaos of vengeance layered upon victory. Aragorn orders them driven off. "No more killing," he commands, voice carrying authority that cuts through noise. Not today. Some obey, some cannot. Blood has its own momentum. In the north, far from this battle, the ring-bearer still crawls toward Mount Doom. Frodo and Sam still suffer. Gollum still follows. The destruction of the ring still comes, because it is a thread that even this altered history does not easily break. The ring falls into fire, and Sauron's power collapses like a tower of dust. Across Middle-earth, a wind rises. In Mordor, the Black Gate's towers crumble. In Minas Tirith, men stop mid-swing, suddenly dizzy, as if a sound has ceased that they had not known they heard. The sky seems larger. For a moment, the world feels light. Relief becomes something like laughter again. People embrace. They look upward as clouds part. They dare to believe the nightmare is over. But when the dust settles, the world they have saved is not the world they wanted. Without Rohan, there is no strong kingdom of horsemen to stabilize the west of Gondor. The plains remain fractured, ruled by local lords descended from invaders, hardened by decades of predation. Some are willing to bend the knee to Aragorn's new reign, but their oaths are thin and conditional. Others refuse outright, retreating into forts and marshy strongholds, ready to become bandits once more. Aragorn, crowned King Elessar, walks the repaired courts of Minas Tirith and hears petitions not only for rebuilding, but for protection against the very neighbors who should have been allies. He sends envoys, offers pardons, promises law. Some accept, many do not. Éomer does not exist as a king in this world. Theoden is never born. Éowyn's courage never finds its famous moment. The songs of Rohan are never sung, because Rohan never was. There is a silence in the cultural memory of men, an empty space where a proud people should have stood. In the far north, the descendants of Eorl still ride the cold lands near the sources of Anduin. They remain proud, but their pride is tinged with bitterness. They remember the southern ride as a wound that never healed properly. They tell stories of mud and reeds and the smell of chudge blood on foreign grass. They did not gain a homeland. They gained a lesson. Even heroism can arrive too late. Eorl himself does not live to see the ring destroyed. He dies years earlier, not in glory, but of a fever caught on a later campaign, lying in his hall with sweat on his brow while snow falls outside. Britta holds his hand. Their child, grown now, watches with eyes that have learned grief early. Eorl whispers, voice barely audible, "Did we hold them? Britta answers. You held what you could. Eorl's eyes drift toward the rafters, toward shadows that look like riders in smoke. I wanted a green land, he murmurs. Britta swallows. I know. When he dies, the hall is quiet for a long time. Outside, horses stamp, sensing the change. In the south, ordinary people rebuild among ruins. A woman in Minas Tirith scrubs soot from a stone step, hands raw, and pauses to listen to the city's new sounds. Hammers, distant singing, a child laughing. She lets herself smile, and for a heartbeat, hope feels real. Then she hears, the far beyond the walls, a different sound. A horn, faint but unmistakable. Not Gondor's clear call, but a harsh note from the plains. She freezes. The smile fades. She returns to scrubbing harder, as if she can scour away the future. In Isengard, Saruman does not fall in the same way either. Without Rohan to oppose him early, his power spreads wider before it is checked. The Ents do eventually break part of his ring, but he escapes more effectively, slipping away into the north with a small following, bitter and cunning. He becomes a shadow moving through a wounded world, poisoning wells of trust. The Shire, in time, still faces trouble, because Saruman's spite seeks a small, soft thing to crush when he cannot have a kingdom. The hobbits will fight, yes, they will endure, but their innocence will be cracked by a malice that wandered there because it was not stopped sooner. And so, the bittersweet resolution settles over Middle-earth like twilight. Sauron is gone. The Great Eye is extinguished. The towers of Barad-dûr lie in ruin. The world has been spared the final dominion of shadow. Yet the Westlands are not healed by a single victory. The void where Rohan should have stood remains a corridor of instability, a scar that invites lesser evils. Without the strong horse lords, Gondor must stretch itself thin to guard the gap, to patrol the plains, to protect the roads. Men who might have been farmers become soldiers for life. Children grow up hearing distant horns and not knowing whether they mean trade or raid. And what of the land itself? The grass that in another tale would have thundered under hooves in defense of the White City. In late spring, years after the ring is destroyed, a lone rider travels through the plains west of the Anduin. He is a messenger of King Elessar, sent to negotiate with a petty lord who claims authority over a stretch of riverbank. The rider passes through a valley where the grass is high and bright green, deceptively peaceful. The sky is wide. Clouds drift like ships. He slows when he sees something half buried in the earth. A banner pole, snapped, its wood bleached. Cloth tangled around it, faded, but still showing the shape of a white horse on green. The symbol is not known here. It never became famous. It never became a nation. It is only a forgotten dream caught in roots. The rider dismounts and touches the cloth gently. It crumbles slightly under his fingers, as if the land itself is swallowing memory. He looks around, suddenly uneasy, because the valley is too quiet. In the distance, beyond a low rise, a horn sounds, harsh, chuj, answered by another and another, until the wide green plain seems to breathe out war again. The messenger stands alone beside the ruined banner, and the wind lifts the last shreds of green, as if trying one final time to make a horse run.